In this lesson, I really want to introduce you to layer masks, and we're going to do some compositing and have a little bit of fun with this image and a couple of other images we're going to put together. I surmise that the best way to cut this out from the background is to, I'm going to unlock it, and I'm really big on making copies. Command J, layer via copy, will make a copy of it. I will turn off the eyeball. In fact, it's almost better if I can drag it into a folder and it's in a group, and I'm just going to call this group source. So each image before I do any treatment to it will be in here. And I'm going to turn off the eyeball to that too. Go back onto the dog with its little dog friend. I think the magnetic lasso would probably work best. So I'm going to click and then let Photoshop do the work, or as much work as possible. I might click there, going around the bed. See, it's the edge isn't really well defined here, so I have to guess a little bit. Click when I get to the ear, and it's going to be looking at a new contrast here. I'm going to go up and around, just so I have a little more experience with the magnetic lasso. I clicked there, and I'm probably going to click here, and then I'll go up and around, oops, this ear. I might have a little editing to do. Oops, click here, and then go around the bed here, oops, and I'll click here, and then I'm just going to go, oops, I was going to go straight up, but it got away from me. That's okay, that's easy to fix. Come back down, and because I don't see that circle that tells me I'm where, there's the circle, but if you don't see the circle, hold the command key or the control key if you're nearby, and it'll find it for you. Just hold it down and click, and it found it. Now I'm going to make a layer mask. I'll show you how I can fix this little glitch and maybe soften the edges a little bit. This is our layer. I am going to, down here, see this icon? It's a square with a hole in it. If you hover over, it'll say add layer mask. There are masking functions in a lot of panels, and they do slightly different things. They do mask, but they're not all layer masks. So I'm going to click on this. There's our layer mask. Now it's inverted. We really need the dog to be in white and the background to be in black, because if you just remember this little thing, black conceals, white reveals, you'll realize how easy it is to remember that. So in order to invert the layer mask, I have to make sure I have that selected. See, it's got the little frame around it. I'm going to do a Command I, and up here where I my hand lost control, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to the brush and make sure I have a hard edge brush. It's very tiny, so I'm going to hit the right bracket, and if I just keep going, and I want to make sure, remember, black conceals, so I have black in my chip, and I'm just going to go up here, and I'm editing the layer mask. And if you notice, let me show you the layer mask. See that? I can actually do it in the layer mask by looking at the layer mask and make sure I get everything that shouldn't be seen taken care of. Here we go. So now I'm just going to click back on the picture and then back on the layer mask. So I've got that pretty well selected. It would be nice to see slightly softer edges, and I see a little tiny place. See up here by the ear? I'm going to go back and get my paintbrush. This time I want a smaller paintbrush, so I'll hit the left bracket key and go get around the edge. And now I just want to soften things up a little bit. So I am on the layer mask. I want to be on the layer mask. And I want to right click and get select and mask. Now, I want this to be slightly smoother, and if I shift the edge in just a tiny bit, the transparency is 100%. So now I can see my edges. I'm going to smooth the edges a little bit. I'm going to feather the edge a little bit, maybe a little bit more. This is feathering the mask. I've shifted the mask in a little, maybe too much. Let me go back. That's going in the wrong. The middle, this is closing the mask in a little bit. Maybe a little edge radius. That might help. Let's see, smart rate. Now I'll tell you, this is experimentation. Every time I look at, let's try contrast. Every time I look at a tutorial with this select and mask, if you have something called refine edge, it's the same thing. It was the precursor to the select and mask. I'm almost convinced it was better, to be honest, but decontaminate colors, if you click that, it doesn't pick up the background. So it's destructive, and it will output it. Here's output to new layer with mask. You have choices. You could just have a selection. You could have a new layer. I tend to like new layer with layer mask. You can remember the settings if you're working on multiple things from one photo shoot. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to Command minus so we can go out. And that looks pretty good. Notice I've got two of them because I had the layer mask on the original. Now I have the one that the layer was decontaminated. I'm going to put this also in source. I don't need it right now. This is the one I need. I'm going to do a save as. Save it in my area where I save the pictures there that are made from tutorials, the images. So that's going to be our dog in bed with stuffed dog. I'm going to just, let's see, this is really going to be layer masks, dogs. And that's what I'll remember what it is. So now we've got this. Notice if you want to see, I have to click on the layer mask. If you hold the shift key, you can see what you've done. There's the original background. There's the new dog with his little stuffed toy. I'm going to go in here and get the sunrise. I'm going to go to my move tool and I'm going to drag this up. And now I'm dragging it in with the dog. It has to be below the dog. Don't forget we have a hierarchy to deal with. And I thought a sunrise might be kind of nice. They're sleeping and the sun is coming up. And then I thought maybe it would be kind of fun to put a little crown on the dog. So I'm going to go get this crown. I'm going to cut the crown out here. So I'm going to unclick. I'm going to use my magic wand and select the white. And I'm going to invert it with the select tool, inverse. Command C for copy. And now I'm going to copy it into here. It's enormous, because I downloaded really big images. So I'm going to go to free transform. And I don't want to distort it, but I have to make it much smaller. I'm going to make a little tiny crown to put on this dog. And just so it looks a little more, even though it's goofy, a little more realistic, I'm going to add a tiny bit of a layer mask here so you don't see this part of the crown. So I'm going to go to the V key to move, and it's not liking that because tolerance was highlighted. I'm going to move it up a little bit. There we go. Just a tiny bit. I'm going to put a layer mask on here. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to get my elliptical marquee tool, and I'm going to make an ellipse that kind of goes like that. But then I'm going to go to select, transform selection, and in order to make it not be perfect, I'm holding the shift key. See, I'm trying to make it so it'll, oh, notice I can pull the edges, and I'm going to see if I can move it up a little tiny bit. And then I'm going to fill this with black. I'm going to Option, Delete. Not quite enough, so I'm going to go over here and get my brush. Hopefully I have a more steady hand. There we go. There we go. I'm just going to slightly make the crown. The beauty of the layer mask is you can go back and forth between white and black. So if I felt like I didn't do something enough or I did it too much, I can go back in and add it back in. So for example, let's say I did that. Oh dear. I just hit the X key to get white and bring this back in. Because this is called non-destructive editing, really. You can go back and forth between the black and white, and you're never destroying the original image. I'm going to make this a little smaller because I made this very, very high resolution. So there we have the dog with his stuffed dog and a new sky in the background. And that's more of an introduction to layer masks.